Hi, my name is Ava Uribe, and I am currently a freshman playing soccer for Penn State University, and I'm majoring in finance. I first started playing soccer for my co-ed team in kindergarten as a part of the youth organization when I was 5. My older brother, who's 2 years older than me, he played soccer. And so, of course, I was adamant on starting as soon as I could and trying to compete with him and going to his practices. My dad actually coached me for my first couple of years playing rec soccer, and I got to play with a lot of my classmates, which was super fun. And also play a lot of other sports like basketball and dance and eventually lacrosse too. But ultimately, it was when it came down to having to pick and almost specialize in my sport, I switched to a more premier team, a more competitive travel team in 3rd grade. And from there, that's kind of where my soccer journey started. So throughout my youth career, I've actually been fortunate enough to play with the U.S. Youth National Team on multiple different stages. The first time I got my call up was in 8th grade, and I was playing for the Reign Academy, which Seattle's professional women's soccer team, which is in the NWSL, is the Seattle Reign. So their academy is where I was playing, and my coach pulled me aside after practice and had told me that at the last tournament we had went to, which was about a month ago or a month prior in Florida, I had been scouted by a U.S. national team scout, and I was going to get to go to the first ever camp for my age group. This was the U16 youth national team in California. And so I flew down there and was able to train for a week. And it was definitely a very overwhelming experience for me. They ranked us in order on basically everything we did, from technical skills like juggling to speed, to our shooting accuracy and everything. And so even though the week was really challenging, I enjoyed my time. And once I left the camp, I felt pretty good. Unfortunately, I was actually cut after my first camp, which was definitely discouraging. But by the end of my freshman year, so just a little over a year later, I got a call up back to play for the U17 national team in the Netherlands. And here I scored my first both domestic and international goal and had a lot of fun with the team. And from there, I got to play in many successive camps for the U17s, some domestics, such as in Florida. And then I also got to travel for the UEFA tournament in England right before COVID, my sophomore year of high school, which was honestly one of the best experiences of my life. From there, we had more camps planned, but because of COVID, we had to stall those. So I participated in a couple of virtual camps as a part of the U18 team. And we got to go over tactics and different fitness plans and ways that we can continue to train ourselves to be ready. And those were unfortunately the last camps that I got to attend. As of college, the camp schedule definitely decreases because we're in season and they can't take us away from our college schedules, unfortunately. But that has been my experience with the U.S. national team thus far. And I'm super grateful for the time, and I can't wait to be back in it. So yes, originally I was supposed to be with you all in person. I was super excited to escape the freeze that we're in Pennsylvania and get some warm weather and enjoy a fun weekend. I think I was even going to do a little skills clinic and see what kind of soccer phenoms we have with us today. But actually, true to its fashion, NILs are still very complicated, and what basically was originally the approval of me to attend was eventually denied by my school. So I submitted my NIL claim to come and hang out with you all today in early December. And it's basically through this app that Penn State uses with all its athletes, where we write disclosures, we submit contracts, and then our compliance officials will go and approve it just to make sure that we are totally in line with the school and with the NCAA. And so I've done a couple of these disclosures before. I'm pretty comfortable with them, actually. And I sent in my disclosure for an NIL and it was approved. And then I was talking with my coaches in early January, and they were like, I was talking to them about how I'd be traveling to San Diego, and they were a little confused because when I said I would miss a couple of days of school and practice, and it turns out that one of Penn State's NIL policies is that athletes, and this is a policy shared among most D1 institutions. It is highly recommended by the NCAA. And so one of their policies is that student athletes are not allowed to miss any class or practice for any type of NIL opportunity. And I was completely unaware of this, and it actually flew by my compliance officers, who later told me that they misread that it was actually an in-person appearance and not something I'd be completing virtually. And so I think that ultimately that just shows, as student athletes, as compliance officers, as universities, we still have a lot to figure out with NILs, and they're very complicated, especially for student athletes that don't know that much about reading through contracts and who are basically relying on the university's education about NILs. All my knowledge about what is okay with NILs and what is not is based on what the compliance officers have relayed to me, what they have presented to me in a couple presentations given to my team. But it really shows that we still all have a lot to learn. For my best experience with NILs, I think I've actually been fortunate enough to be one of the fewer female athletes that has had so many wonderful experiences. So this is definitely a hard one. I think one of the most fun ones to talk about and to remember was, so for our soccer team and for many D1 soccer teams across the country, the beep test is the end all be all. That is how we start our season, and the score on that can really dictate a lot in terms of playing time, position on the team, all sorts of stuff. And so over the summer, we had a big fitness packet that I was working on, and my brother actually gave me the idea. He's like, and this at the time I didn't really use TikTok, at least didn't really post on it. He's like, you should make a day in the life or come run the beep test with me, because we had a practice beep test. This was in June. And I was like, I don't know. I don't know if that's really something I want to do. And he's like, no, you should do it. And put a bunch of hashtags on it that have to do with D1, soccer, Penn State. And I was like, okay. So I made a little TikTok about practice running the beep test and just my tips for other people who are either running the beep test or girls who are looking to play college soccer, see what it's like a little bit. And I posted it and went to bed. And then the next morning I woke up and it had it was 15, 16, and it actually rose to 80,000 views, which I only had 500 followers. So it was actually insane, and it was going viral, and people from across the country that I knew were texting me videos of it. But the coolest thing that came out of it was actually a cold brew brand. And I'm a big coffee person, being from Seattle. I have to have my coffee every day. But a big cold brew brand actually reached out to me after that, and just said that they loved what I was doing and that they were excited for me to train and work hard this summer. And that if I, thought that there might be an opportunity to work with them, that they'd love to talk with me and Zoom with me. And that was really the first time that I had gotten an opportunity that I didn't ask for, that I didn't, actively reach out to the brand, but they actually came to me, and kind of gave me a mini little celebrity moment that I hadn't had up until then, which as a freshman in college, I think was the coolest experience ever. So it'll probably be forever one of my favorite NIL experiences. So unfortunately, I think there are a lot of challenges to NILs that are kind of hard to see if you're not behind the scenes. I know whenever we have meetings with our counselors and stuff like that about NILs, as a team, they'll be like, who has an NIL? And everyone on my team looks back to me, because I am one of the only girls on my team that are doing NILs. And it's not because these girls don't have platforms or love using social media or stuff like that, but it's just because of the amount of lack of information we have on NILs. It can be kind of intimidating to get into that. And then with the busyness of our schedule, I know one of my worst experiences with NILs was with a company who I loved working with, but they would send me briefs for what content they wanted me to create and then expect it to be due in about 5 days, which if you're creating a big video and you have to edit and between class and sometimes we'd be on the road, I mean, that's a pretty short time frame. And one of the times it happened to be that they sent me a brief Monday of finals week and wanted it back Thursday. And I just remember the amount of anxiety and stress that gave me, trying to make sure I finished the year strong academically and trying to finish this content, because obviously it's very important for me and for my brand that I am always one of those persons who needs to turn everything in on time. And I hold myself to that higher standard. But at the same time, knowing that, finals, it's a big deal for me personally, beyond just the team and maintaining that GPA. And so I think that was one of my worst experiences. And I think a lot of girls have resonated with that NIL sound cool, but at the end of the day, with the busyness of our schedule, being a student athlete with practices in season and out of season, and class, that NILs are actually seem like more of a burden than kind of the reward of getting to work with different brands and make some money. And so I think that has been one of the biggest struggles. And then also from a legal side, I mean, I kind of shared with you guys a little bit that NILs and the contracts are pretty intimidating. I remember the first time I received a 12-month contract with a brand, I was blown away by the PDF that they sent me and expected me to read over this and then just sign and try back to us. And I was kind of like, I can't believe they didn't recommend that I have someone sit down with me and read it. And it's kind of scary thinking that something as small as that could sacrifice your entire 4 years of NCAA eligibility. And so thankfully for me, I have a great support system. And at Penn State, we have a lot of plans in place, and they're not foolproof, but I was able to work with both my school and someone outside of school to make sure that we read over my contract and read the cans and cannots of being in a contract for as long as 12 months. And that is something I'm really fortunate to have. But I think for a lot of athletes, that side of it is so intimidating that they'd almost rather not risk it. And frankly, I don't blame them at this point. And so I think it's great that a lot of schools are, continuing to develop their staff in terms of compliance, and that NILs are really being taken seriously. But I definitely think we also have a long ways to go. I think another more positive way that NILs are changing my sport in specific, and kind of from the female perspective, is, in the past, like sponsorships and endorsements for professional female athletes are kind of few, and a lot of times they're not worth a lot of money, unfortunately. And so I think watching other female athletes such as myself at such a young age start to work with massive brands like Nike, and all sorts of like sports companies, Liquid IV, all things like that, I think is huge. And it just shows how the fan base for women's sports is growing and the times are changing. And I think that's so exciting that we're able to get these things now, because these same brands are what are holding up our professional leagues now by giving endorsements and sponsorships to players where their salaries are, very few and almost probably below the standard of living. And so I think that showing how these companies are supporting us now in our journeys and will continue to support us out of college is really promising. And I think one of the really positive impacts that NILs have had. So I think the difference in NILs in female and male sports is pretty drastic. I know at least at my school, a lot of our men's basketball team, football team, they can sign a jersey and send it off and get paid for it, or record a 20-second video, a little cameo saying happy birthday to someone and send it off and get paid. Whereas I think if I sent a happy birthday video, people would think I'm crazy, and I'm not entirely sure anyone would want that. And so I think that a lot of times girls are dissuaded from even trying for NILs because they're like, who wants my signed jersey? We don't have the same fan base. We don't bring in the same crowds that a lot of our male counterparts do. But I will say that I think if you look at some of the top creators in terms of social media and content created on Instagram, TikTok, Snapchat verified, all those things, most of the time the top 5 is almost all females, and the top 10 is definitely a majority females, because of the way that a lot of women are breaking into the content creating industry. And so I think the biggest opportunity then for female athletes is to work with brands that wants that kind of content, wants the dedication and commitment to making a minute video, a vlog of their entire day, and including a certain brand in it. And so I think that there is a lot of opportunity there that, maybe we're not signing jerseys or making quite as many in-person appearances as our male counterparts, but I think there's a whole nother side of NILs that female athletes are definitely breaking into, and I think can really crush in that industry. As for the future of NILs, I think there are 3 things going forward that I would like to see personally. And if it's not in my time, then I hope for the next generation of college athletes, it will be. The first is better communication and communication channels. I think some of my experiences working with brands and being able to email them and, get a response within 1 to 2 days and feeling like I'm really a part of the team and a part of the company and cared for has been monumental in my decision to keep working with brands and, keep trying to make content. But some of my experiences using apps and other kind of more awkward and kind of clunky channels of communication have been pretty awful, where they're asking me to create things and I send them out and sometimes I don't even get a response after I've spent a lot of time working on something and don't end up getting compensated, I think has been pretty frustrating. And it kind of like builds a lack of trust, which I think is pretty dissuading for other athletes to try and work with brands. And I think also just the acknowledgement with the communication that we are busy college students. We have a lot expected of us in terms of class and performance on the field. And so just being able to work with those schedules and kind of showing genuine human interaction rather than just really, really rigid deadlines, I think is something that I would like to see personally going forward. The second thing is better compensation. I think that as a female athlete, the work that I do with companies is a lot more extensive than the work of, some of the other male athletes. And so I think it's just as simple as I kind of want to be rewarded the same way. I think I'm reaching a really large platform of people. And so I think that being rewarded for that work would be really motivating for me. And I think ultimately pretty fair as well. And then the third thing is higher level education. Like I said, I expected to be there with you guys today, and I learned a pretty big lesson and was thankfully able to catch that before it ended up affecting anything more serious. But I think that we just need to continue working with athletes and informing them of the rules of NIL, especially when changes do occur. But I think it's also on the side of the brands. I think that a lot of these brands don't quite have the personnel who are informed of the different rules of NIL. And I think that's pretty scary as an athlete, because it's like, who do I trust? Do I need to pay someone to come in and read my contracts? And that just brings a bigger burden on me. And again, just decreases the compensation of the whole thing. And then I have to weigh, is the NIL worth it or is it not? And so I think if both brands and athletes can work to get more educated about NILs, it'll be a much better experience for everyone. So thank you so much for your time today. And I hope you guys have a great rest of the conference. I wish I could be there in person with you, but instead I have brought a couple of some signed soccer balls that I think they're gonna kick into the crowd or throw into the crowd. So have a great rest of your day and enjoy the conference. Thank you.